Stefan, how are you feeling today?
Great, thank you. Thanks for having me, Daniel. I'm feeling great. It's a nice day. It was a nice day, and yeah, very thankful for what I have in life.
You're welcome. It's your first podcast, right?
It is my
Yeah.
first experience of recording a podcast.
We had many first timers so far, so we're very nice.
Thank you. Thanks for
Stefan,
having me.
you're welcome. You came here by bike, right?
Yes.
What's the story behind that?
So, when I was younger, I used to cycle quite a lot. I had a friend of mine at secondary school, and after school, we used to grab the bicycle and drive from Birkirkara to Rabat almost every day. So, obviously, there were a lot less cars on the road. This was, let's say, 15 years ago. And so I fell in love with cycling. I kept on cycling on and off since then. And I continued training physically, doing everything else but cycling for quite some
Okay.
time. Recently, in the past 2 years, I had an injury and I couldn't run anymore. Probably will tap into training and running and what I did back then. And as a way of finding another sport that I can do, my doctor told me that I could cycle, so I thought to myself, okay, I want to buy a bicycle. I bought a bicycle and I started cycling almost every day for quite a while now.
Okay.
And now I even took it a step further to cycle to work. I was listening to another podcast, and there was a young guy, a bit younger than I am, and he was explaining, like, we sometimes make a lot of excuses why not to do a thing instead of finding the right reason of why to do something. And I was thinking to myself, yes, I could cycle to work. We do have short distances. I don't cycle to the same client or to the same place every day, which is an opportunity and also a bit of a challenge in itself. And now I haven't used my car in the last couple of weeks, like last 2 weeks.
Okay.
So yeah, today I cycled from Zebuch to Imrihel and from Imrihel to Cordine, and now from Cordine back to Zebuch after we finish.
Quite a long way ahead then.
Yeah, but it's about 8 or 9 kilometers, which would take me probably 30 minutes, 35 minutes.
It's
Something
quite a long cycle.
Yeah, it's quite a long cycle, but it's still 30 minutes. So if I had
Yes.
to get a car ride, if I had to drive myself from Cordine
Yes.
to home, it would still take me a good 15, 20 minutes. So I'm like, okay, add another 10 minutes. What would you do in 10 minutes? It's not that much. So in the end,
sure.
today I would have managed to do a bit of exercise. It's exercise, it's not training, it's just exercising.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's totally different.
Yes.
But maybe I would have exercised for about an hour, 15 minutes during the course of the
Yes.
day.
And if you add another workout to that, it's what?
Exactly. So yeah, that's
So
the
even
plan
better.
for today. When we finish off, I get my bike, I cycle back home, and then do a workout of maybe 45 minutes, and that's it.
Then we should live stream as well, because that's my intention as well today.
That's perfect.
Stefan, what did cycling teach you about yourself?
I'll actually reword that question to what did training teach me about myself.
Okay.
And I'm saying this because I only cycle to commute, basically, and it's for me, I'm not cycling to train, but I used to train sort of on a more serious note. I only consider myself as an amateur cyclist, and in all fairness, I am an amateur cyclist. But training in itself, before I started cycling, I used to run. I did a bit of long distance running. And I did maybe 8 years running on and off. In the meantime, I was training martial arts. I did about 12 years.
What sort of
training
martial arts?
I used to train Kung Fu.
Okay.
the official name, it's a Chinese Kung Fu, and the style that I used to train in is called Wing Chun.
Okay, I've heard about this style.
It's a very practical self-defense system that was invented by a woman, and a Chinese nun, which is based on the laws of physics. So it was super interesting for me, coming from a bit of a scientific background, because the idea behind this martial art is that the rules of physics always apply, and so it's a perfect system in itself as long as you can apply those principles. So yes, I did about 12 years of martial arts, and before that I even did about 4 years of handball training, and that was actually my start, my initiation into physical training. So I was brought up in Birkirkara. Coincidentally, I was saying this story yesterday at a client audit. I was brought up in Birkirkara, and being born in Birkirkara, where football, just like anywhere else in Malta, but football in Birkirkara is quite huge.
It is.
So I never trained anything physically up until I was about 13 years of age. Reason being is that when I was younger, I wasn't training football. I didn't go to nurseries. So I was usually the guy that gets selected last to join a team when there's literally no one else to choose. And so I made myself believe that I wasn't good in sports. It was like, you know what, I'm not good in sports, full stop, that's it, that's the end of it. And I believed that for quite a long time, also given that my parents never trained themselves. So I was okay, I was like thinking to myself, some people are brought up and they are naturally good in sports, and I'm not. So I believed that. Then I went to secondary school, and I made friends with one of my other friends, and back then he used to train handball, and we did quite a lot of physical activity back then in summer, like during school times, playing and what have you. And that point in time, I said to myself, you know what, let me train some handball, see how it goes. I used to shoot with my left arm, left hand, even though I write with my right arm, with my right hand, I used to play with my left hand.
Okay.
And that's usually uncommon in handball, so there's a lot of demand for left-handed players. So that already made me a bit different than anyone else, and people were like, so you shoot with your left, you can play as a right winger, that would be great. So that's how I started training, and I remember during one of our first training sessions, the coach was like, okay, who's gonna lose will need to do 20 push-ups. We lost, and I was literally pushing as hard as I could and couldn't move myself off the floor when I was about 13 years of age.
Yeah.
Fast forward a bit, I started training with the under-16s team, and then I started playing with the under-16 teams and with the elder teams, and like within 6 months or something like that, I was training 4 times a week. Then we got selected to play for the FISEC games. So I was playing with the national handball team for under 18s or under 21s. And again, I wasn't very good physically, but I had the advantage that I used to play with my
your left hand. Yeah.
After that, I moved into personal sports, so I liked the idea of team sports. Then again, I had a bit of a clash with some other coaches. Reason being is this: I was never the type of player that excels in a team. I wasn't the Lionel Messi of football. I wasn't the Cristiano Ronaldo. I was more like, you pass me the ball, we need to be all good in the team. So there were times where then I was the oldest person in the team, so my coaches had quite a lot of expectations. So I started to hate that, and I thought to myself, you know what, enough of this. So I stopped handball and I started martial arts at age 18,
Okay.
which could be considered as old or not old. I don't know. So I started training martial arts, and in the meantime, I also used to go jogging around Birkirkara. So yeah, I
You kept yourself fit.
fit.
Mm.
I did about 12 years of martial arts on and off. Well, actually on. I never actually stopped. And I learned a lot in this particular martial art because what I liked most about it is that it is the most practical way of fighting which I found. Meaning that there are no rules, meaning that whatever, well, there are different martial arts, some of them are sports, some of them aren't. Well, if you need to defend yourself in the street, if someone is going to attack you in the street, people are not going to be like, but I cannot hit him under the belt, or I cannot eye gouge him, or I cannot do this and I cannot do that. So this shaped me into, and this always shaped me into seeing things, if it's not practical, then it's useless.
Okay.
That being said, obviously we still needed to train, and you cannot like go and eye gouge people during training, else you can only do that twice to someone.
Yeah.
Like there are
One at a time.
One at a time. Yeah. But what actually was interesting is this, that I started realizing that although team sports are fun, there was a certain limiting factor to team sports, meaning that you're always part of a team and the team is only as strong as its weakest link.
Agreed, yes, yeah.
So that's why I started running, I started martial arts, because I could really see that if I put my mind to it, then I am the only person that's holding me back.
So what I'm hearing is that you found it more effective to be
Yeah.
On your own.
Yes.
Okay.
And in fact, compared to, for example, other people that used to, I don't know, train football, for example, there's always this mentality, the players against the coach. So the coach goes like, okay, you need to do 10 laps around the football court as a warm-up. Okay, we'll count 8 and hope that he doesn't notice. Yeah, but who are you cheating? You're cheating yourself. So that's how I always saw things. I don't train because my coach tells me to train.
Mm-hmm.
That with also being self-motivating. So I found that again, in martial arts, I got frustrated a couple of times. Why? Because, for example, if I had done 2 years of martial arts training, and on a particular evening you would come, it's your first training session, but you did, 6 years of playing football.
Mm-hmm.
So you are physically very fit. And I did 2 years of martial arts, and you punch me and you hit me. So I might be like, whoa, why is this happening? It shouldn't be like this. Because I've done this for longer than you have. Whereas it's pretty simple. If you as a person, which means your physical training, your ability to find empty spaces, whatever, if you could hit me, then it's not your fault that you could hit me. It's my fault that I couldn't defend it. And that's how this martial arts system helped me see things with a certain perspective. It's like this. The physics is always there. It's always going, the rules of physics won't bend for you. If it's not working, it's your fault, not the attacker's fault.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's a perspective of how I sort of started to see aspects in life. Some of the principles of this martial arts are so vague, and they are so applicable to not only the martial art, to life itself. First principle was, if the way is clear, go forward. It's a very vague principle. If the way is clear, go forward. Okay. In this practical martial arts, that means that what's the simplest way to go forward. It's literally stepping forward. It's literally punching forward. So I won't punch you with a roundhouse punch, which needs to go around. I'll punch you straight from my chest. The shortest distance between me and my opponent is the straight line. So my punch would go literally from here to your face straight. That means that in life, if there's an obstacle, first thing I need to go is to go straight to that obstacle. Second principle is, if the way isn't clear, stick to your opponent. So if I couldn't go straight and there's a force which is bigger than mine, then I need to stick to my opponent, stick to the problem. So again, what's interesting is this, that during the first couple of years of martial arts, you are there to learn how to fight, or that was my motivation. I wanted to learn how to fight. The more you learn the martial arts, the more you learn how not to fight.
Yeah.
And the most interesting aspect of it is that the best martial artist is the one that never fights. So even in the way that if you're in a bar and somebody, I don't know, hits you over the shoulder, or the simplest thing to do is, well, what are you going to do? You could either tell him, move out of the way, or you could just keep on walking. Avoid the fight before it even happens. But he might turn around and say, oh, what? And then in that case, you'll go, well, no, I don't want to fight. I really don't want to fight. And obviously there's a big difference between what you might be saying and what you might be doing than what you are actually doing. So I might be saying, no, I don't want to fight, but in all fairness, my hands up here, although they are empty because they are not threatening, if I go like, I don't want to fight, he's gonna, no, I don't want to fight, but this is my guard, which is the same guard, which are the same punches that you're going to use. But if from here my opponent is going to try, or this guy is going to try to do anything which is funny, literally, go forward. Even if you don't know how to fight, if you just move forward and put your hand in this guy's face, he'll be like, whoa.
And some people don't expect you to come forward.
Yes.
Yeah. So
in fact, that's one of the hardest principles to ever learn. That you're seeing someone who's going to punch you, and your best defense is not to go back and not to block, but it's actually to move forward. Even if you just step forward without lifting your arms to block, you're going to startle the other person, because that's not what he's expecting to see.
That's right.
So that was part of my journey. I started training martial arts after that. During that period of time as well, I started running more regularly. I did about, I think, in the region of 20 to 25 half marathons.
Okay.
So again, I used to run on and off without a coach, just.
That's for the buzz of it.
Yeah. Sometimes I would again self-motivate. I'd be like, okay, it's a Sunday afternoon. I used to live in Birkirkara, and I'd be like, okay, I think I could jog it from here to the Love Monument and back. And that's pretty much 20-something kilometers. And that's what I used to
Which
do.
is a half marathon, I believe?
Yes, 21 kilometers is a half marathon. I never went beyond the 21 kilometer mark. So I started doing that on and off. And after the martial arts group that I was training with, it died, it had its natural course, and it sort of fizzled away, I transitioned into running.
Okay.
And I joined a running club, I had a running coach, and I started training more regularly. At that time, I quit smoking. So yeah, mind you, I used to smoke.
Okay.
Quite a lot, maybe 10 cigarettes every day or something like that.
Half a packet?
5 and 10 cigarettes every day. But at that point, then I quit smoking, and I started training more. And running more and more regularly, and then again, running is highly addictive in the sense that it's very easy to measure your own progress compared to martial arts.
For sure.
So again, in martial arts, what could I use to say I'm improving and I'm not improving.
There's no metric really, other than the grading to progress, yeah?
The grading itself, yeah, but again, the grading is a bit of, might be misleading. Reason being is this: when this particular martial arts, and a lot of the martial arts were adopted in Western civilization, a grading system was created so that you could classify the whole system, because this is a system, it has a start and an end. But the grading itself meant that you would have known, or you would have been taught, a principle or a
set
technique.
of techniques, yeah.
Now, the problem with that is that to learn techniques, you need to pay money, like everything in life. So you pay money to learn techniques, okay? But the fact that you are taught a technique doesn't mean that you have learned the technique. And there's a huge difference between learning the technique, meaning I know what I need to do, as in my brain knows how my body needs to react.
Yeah.
There's a huge difference between that and your body naturally reacts the way it should react. And to bridge that, you need training. So, again, I think it was Bruce Lee who said, I don't fear the guy who knows 10,000 kicks. I fear the guy who knows one kick and practiced it 10,000 times.
Yeah.
And again, this is all based on muscle memory. So you train a technique and you know that if you're going to punch, you need to punch straight. Okay, but then if you need to punch straight and there's an opposing force, your arm needs to bend. Okay, but between knowing this and practicing it and actually having someone punching me and I do it, there's a huge gap. And that's why it's interesting, because you can pay to learn all the techniques, and you could be a technically grade 10 and have someone which is a grade 2 or 3 that would beat the crap out of you. Why? Because he's a good grade 2 or grade 3 and you're a bad grade 10.
Yeah, yeah.
Hence, the physics never lies.
You can't pay mastery, so...
Yes, you can't pay. You can pay for the status of being a grade 10.
Yeah.
But, yeah. And again, that's why it's interesting, because what you've learned, unless you can apply it, is probably useless. So, shifting that, and again, how could I say, okay, I'm getting better? Usually, knowing that you're improving in martial arts is not something that you would understand yourself. It's something that people who are better than you can tell you.
Okay.
So again, I used to train, I used to teach martial arts to kids as well. I didn't have huge classes. I had a couple of very good students. They wouldn't, and so I could relate, I could understand this point, especially when I'm teaching other people. They couldn't gauge how good they were becoming. This is like if you are training, let's say if you want to lose weight, if you're looking at the mirror every day, you won't be able to notice any difference. But if you take a photo once a week and compare that over a year, then yes. So, but when you're training martial arts, you cannot say, okay, let me revert to my setting of last year. So I cannot understand if I actually got better or not. The only thing that I could use is, and that anyone can use, would be another person who is far better than you.
You can spar with.
Far better than you, telling you, Estra, okay, so now you can get this, and now you're giving me a challenge.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if you compare that to running is totally different. So, again, depending on the type of running that you want to do, and I'm in no way an expert in martial arts, in running and in cycling. But in running, if I wanted to train for a half marathon, then I could say, okay, my first half marathon was 1 hour 45 minutes. I want to reduce 5 minutes of that time.
Because there is a universal law, which is time in that case.
It's time. And again, even when you become more technical in running, you would say, okay, but this is my personal best, so it's my 1 hour 45 minute half marathon, along this route. Because a different route might mean a different time.
For sure.
Being, again, very simply put, if I do a 1 hour 45 minutes in Malta, in a half marathon in Malta, I could probably do 1 hour 40 on a half marathon route in Holland. Obviously, because there's elevation.
Upshills, yeah, for sure.
So, but again, it's much more, it's much simpler to gauge the progress. And you would say, okay, now I want to improve this. And again, in running, there's a lot more of this personal best type of idea. I want to improve my 5 kilometers time, 10 kilometers time, etc. So yeah, I did that for quite a while, and I was improving a lot. Obviously, in the first couple of years, you improve the most. So I was beating my own records
Regularly? Yeah.
regularly. And that's a lot of fun, obviously. And it was helping me setting my own targets and trying to achieve them. And then after I achieved them, I set more, etc., etc. I did, I think it was 1 or 2 obstacle races. Again, a lot of fun. But unfortunately, I had an injury in my left knee, which meant that after a number of, well, firstly, when I had the injury, it was a big strike. Why? Because I was training about 5-6 times a week, sometimes twice a day. For example, I'll go for a run in the morning, and then in the evening I'll
And that's
go
a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. You'd feel the absence of that, for sure.
And that was what happened. So I went from training 6, sometimes even more, 7 times a week. And again, maybe 7 times over 5 days or 6 days. So I went from training a lot during a week to training almost nothing. And even physically, I mean, the emotions that were involved, the lack of training itself, because again, training is an addiction in itself, I couldn't cope with it. So I went to some doctors, and then I got to know that the type of injury which I have is accelerating arthritis, which might be a huge problem now and in the future. So fortunately and unfortunately, I never had injuries before.
Okay.
Fortunately, because I could train. Unfortunately, because I didn't know what to do and how to cope with it.
Yeah.
And the emotional side was that I couldn't think to myself, let me find something else, or I couldn't think to myself, okay, I cannot run, so let me train upper body, or again, because I wanted to run, and the more I couldn't do it, the more I wanted to do it.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to give up. And then I had a lot of ups and downs. So maybe I'll wake up in the morning and I'm like, oh, okay, my knee feels fine. I think I can try and go for a 5 kilometer run or a 3 kilometer run. Okay, let's see. And then I'll wait a couple of days, and then I go. And again, I start anticipating that my injury has healed. I'll run 500 meters, it starts hurting again, and then
Back to square one.
And even worse. So, and again, I had a lot of my friends were within the social circle of running, so I didn't know how to cope with it. That was the biggest problem. Until I realized that this thing is going to stay, and the only way that I could find something else is to try and replace it.
What did it take for you to get to the bottom of it, sort of to accepting that this is going to stay?
Well, I was in denial for quite a long time, and probably I might still be in denial because, well, actually now I forgot the way running made me feel. Because again, I was addicted to the way running makes me feel. And took a long time for me to realize that, and it was actually an active decision, because the doctor told me, well, you could try running, we could try this, we could try that. And I said, aren't you a doctor? Isn't this science?
Yeah.
How come you are telling me we could try this and that as if this is trial and error? And then he told me, well, this all depends on how much you love running, sort of, if you want to continue doing it or not. Well, again, if my life depended on running, then I would run. If my job depended, if I didn't have any other source of income except for running, then I probably would have continued running. But then I started thinking to myself, and this is way before I became a father, I was thinking to myself, okay, I am 33 years of age with the possibility of having arthritis, let's say at age 40. Let's say, just putting it, inventing a number. So that would mean that if I have children, I might not be able to play with them. And how is this going to impact my whole life? Because this is, at that stage, it would become, obviously, it would have a big impact on all aspects of my life, not just running. So I thought about it, and I was like, you know what? Although I love running, and it is a huge part of my life right now, I'm not willing to jeopardize what might happen because I am too stubborn. And again, I am very stubborn. But I was like, you know what? Let me find something else. Let me reinvent myself. And again, this is one of my current struggles. When I used to train martial arts, I used to train, well, in martial arts, the way that I trained, and at the level that we trained, we didn't train to become, to earn a higher grading. Usually that's done for the first couple of years. Okay, you want the glamour, you want the grade. All right, that's nice. But at one point, you continue training martial arts because you want to continue improving on what you've already learned. Yeah. Again, in martial arts, I started training because I wanted to learn how to defend myself. I wanted to learn how to defend myself, and I wanted to learn how to fight. And those got me maybe to the first 2 to 4 years as a motivation. And then you start realizing, okay, now I'm not training to defend myself anymore, because, again, not being arrogant about it, because that's a huge lesson in itself. The moment you become arrogant about it, it becomes a problem, it becomes a weakness. But I was like, okay, now I'm not training to defend myself anymore. Come on, I've been doing this for 12 years. If a guy tries to fight with me in a bar,
You can handle it.
I can probably handle it, obviously being aware that he might have done, 20 years of MMA fighting. So, yeah. But I can handle that scenario. So that's how martial arts transformed itself for me, to continue training to improve myself and become a better martial artist. So in running, it was, okay, I want to train to improve my previous times. Knowing that I hadn't peaked yet. There is an age in running in which you would naturally, physically peak. So again, for shorter distances, you would peak earlier than for longer distances.
For sure.
So you might have people who trained, the 100-meter race and then started going over longer distances to doing the 5K and then etc. But so I hadn't reached that peak yet. And I was trying to improve on my own times. When that stopped, I couldn't find a good enough motivation for me to train. And that I've been struggling with, or I had struggled with for quite some time, meaning why should I train and what should I train?
I think you've actually tackled the situation. I'm sure whether you tackled it knowingly or unknowingly. on two fronts, the way I see it, is that when you realize that by running every day or by pursuing your love for running, you might not be spending quality time with your children in the future, I think you saw it as not useful anymore.
Yeah.
Which is the way you think, as you expressed earlier on, that once you see it as not useful, you sort of put it aside. So that's the first way I think you coped with this, because you didn't see it as useful anymore.
Actually, it could hinder my ultimate goal of being happier in the long run. So,
might have the counter effect. And then, obviously, this is a very common coping mechanism, that you shifted your interest to something equivalent, or what you thought which was equivalent to running.
But the thing is this, for example, for cycling, it's a hobby of mine. I am in no way in the same sense competitively. So I was training running. Okay, I was, again, if you compare my performance in running, I was nowhere near the top 20% performers in running in Malta, let alone on a national scale. And the same thing could be said for martial arts and handball. But I was always driven to become better, and I was motivating myself in that way. But for cycling, I haven't found a passion yet. Maybe I'm doing it because, it's in a way challenging to myself. And recently I was noticed, I heard a quote recently which was a bit of an eye-opener for me, which said something along the lines: don't train to have a pumped chest, don't train for six-pack abs, don't train for the summer body, train so that you could play with your kids and grandkids when you grow older. But again, when I was younger, in this sense, I trained because I wanted to sort of make a name for myself in whichever sport.
I think it's a phase you go through.
Yeah.
I mean, you grow old out of it, sort of. So I think it's a phase you go through, that you start thinking that you become someone famous or known for that, or renowned for that particular sport, but then it becomes sort of personal. It's only for your own satisfaction and growth.
Yeah. And right now I am noticing that I am getting back into the training routine. So again, cycling, when I cycle to my clients, it's not training. I get there on time, and it's just a little bit of exercise, meaning my heart rate never exceeds 140 beats per minute. So just exercise. But training, then it's a bit different. When you train,
it's with intent. You have intent.
Exactly. And I'm not training cycling, I'm training body weight or lifting weights, and again, with no particular reason. I don't want to be 120 kilo guy with
muscle mass
with 3% or 5-10% body weight. I have no clue what I'm talking about. And that's not my motivation for the time being. I'm training because it makes me feel good.
Yeah, and I can relate to that. As we were discussing before, I started training a year and a half ago, and it was a fluke. I was helping my friend out, and I got into it through training. Basically, he offered me a training package, and since then I restarted training. And my intention was exactly that. I trained martial arts in the past as well, so I've trained for 8 years. I used to train Aikido, which is a Japanese martial art, but you reminded me of it because it's very based on physics. We used to call it the art of the circle, where everything moves in a circle, both using the feet and both using the hands as well. And you're using the force by the opponent to guide the momentum and to redirect the energy against the opponent without inflicting too much damage. So it was all about defending rather than intentionally hurting your opponent. And yes, I think training it's of great value in our personal life. And again, I started with a fluke, and I had phases when it comes to training. I started and stopped, but I was always active, I would say, throughout my life. But yeah, I think it plays a huge part in keeping your mind clear in your daily decision making process. So
And in fact, I've been noticing that more frequently, in the sense that, okay, although I trained martial arts and again, part of martial arts is being self-disciplined, and
Yeah.
that's what usually, when I used to train martial arts, people used to say, of course, you train self-defense, so self-defense means self-discipline. No, it doesn't.
no.
And again, people might think, when I used to train myself and train children self-defense, they used to think that we have a lot of structure in everything that we do in life. Again, my line of work, it's structure. And again, coming from that, although I like structure, I am quite unstructured myself in some things that I do.
Okay.
So I do value that for any type of improvement, you need consistency. So if it's work, if it's personal growth, if it's personal training, you need consistency. And it doesn't need to be consistency doesn't need to be every day, or it could be 3 times a week. That's
Yeah.
still consistent at a different frequency.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I don't have the habit yet of training at the same time or at the same place or on particular days, so I'm still finding a good routine.
Mm-hmm.
I've gotten to know that probably the most effective way is to have a fixed time of training, and probably every day. Personally, I've noticed that getting to train every day or cycling to clients, I have noted how I feel different when I drive to clients and when I cycle to clients, in the sense that I have a client of mine who is practically 20 minutes away from my home, on both on my bike and by car.
Yeah.
So it's 20 minutes just the same. But when I cycle there, as soon as I get there, I feel like, okay, I did something to help and to improve myself already. I feel that my brain is clearer. I feel that maybe I am even more driven. Like, it took me 20 minutes to come here, and I needed to focus on the actual cycling.
And
Again,
it's biological, because during exercise or training, our body releases some hormones which makes us feel happy.
yes.
So it's biological.
Biology. And the fact that I needed to cycle for 20 minutes from home to this client without using my phone, without listening to music, without needing to answer to calls, without doing nothing, in itself it is meditative, because as soon as I get there, I'm like, okay, now I need to do this audit, or I need to do this meeting. I have 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, and I need to get this thing done. So that in itself sort of helps me prepare for what I need to do when I'm there.
Yeah.
And I get there, I'm calmer, my mind is clear. When I drive, okay, I might feel that I got more things done. Maybe I did 3 phone calls or 5 phone calls.
But it feels rushed. It
Yeah.
feels rushed. I think if I were to do that, I would feel stressed going into a meeting. I don't cycle, I use the bike, so I don't listen to radio, or while I'm driving, I don't make calls during the drive. So it's quiet, but not as quiet as cycling.
Yeah.
So I can't fully relate to that. But yeah, personally, I'm not a very good multitasker, so I wouldn't dare to try to do 2 things at once, because I will fail at both for sure. But yes, I noticed myself when I had, it happened, actually I had a podcast on this. It was a Saturday, because I usually book my sessions on Saturdays or on Wednesdays. And I first had to go to the workout. I went to the gym and then did the podcast. Usually I calm myself during the podcast, so at the moment I'm feeling very calm. But the sense of zen during this podcast was out of this world, because And I think it was a direct effect because I did the workout before. So yes, I can see it definitely working.
In fact, we were discussing this even before we started. I mean, our Christmas event at work.
Uh-huh.
Well, I didn't mention this, but our Christmas event at work, I mean, we are currently 3 people looking to grow the team. For the past 2 years, at least for the past 2, yes. So last year and the year before that. The year before that, it wasn't like COVID was in Malta, so everybody was crazy, nobody wanted to meet. And I was speaking to one of my colleagues that I've been working with for the past 9 years, and we were like, okay, should we try and do some sort of event for Christmas? And he was like, yeah, we should do a bike ride. Again, obviously, he is...
Bike as in with the motorcycle or with the...
Bicycle.
Okay.
Bicycle ride.
Because in my mind, bike ride is with the motorcycle.
No, I don't have a motorcycle. It was... Again, I cycle amateur, on an amateur level.
Yeah.
My colleague, he is he trains and he cycles.
He's the
and
real
he
deal.
wins competitions in
Okay.
cycling. So we are on that level. He is on that level. I am not. So, but yeah, we did a bicycle ride 2 years ago.
Okay.
And we also did that last year. Usually when we do this, we go around, we'll do maybe 40 to 60 kilometers. Clive would have his route and we'll follow the route. And my bringing training to work, again, we could have chosen, we still do the Christmas dinner and we'll go have a burger.
Yeah, but
or
it's
what
something
have you.
interactive,
Yes.
something fun.
Yes, and in fact, that's what that's one of the aspects that I think brings us closer as a team.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that we have to sweat next to each other,
Yeah.
but the fact that we train, and again, it doesn't need to be that all of us need to cycle, but the fact that we all train, we do our thing. One of us trains almost on a professional level, I train on my own level, and the other guy trains at his own level. That I see that as a very important aspect, because we as human beings, we're not there just to produce.
Yeah.
In terms of being an employer now, I don't expect my people, including myself, to just produce, because I know that our output is going to be impacted a lot by how we feel as individuals.
Agreed.
So if my team trains physically, then they feel good about themselves, then that means that they are healthy, and if they are healthy, then they can give a better quality service to our clients.
You can't pour something from an empty cup. So I am a participant of a workshop that I gave recently reminded me of this quote. So and it applies to people working with people mostly, because if you're working with people, you by default you listen struggles, you listen to hardships, you listen to heartaches, and when we are together, I mean, it comes natural to discuss about issues and problems that we're having. And sometimes when you're on the receiving end, you're often listening, empathizing, and trying to understand the other person and to support as much as you can the other person. And if you do this multiple times throughout the day, you'll empty your battery. So you need to recharge. And by doing that together, you're actually charging each other, because you're doing something different, something together. And actually, there's I'm not sure whether it's a theory, but actually when it comes to team building, not in the sense that the fun events that we understand, but actually to build successful teams, teams grow together and grow closer through adversity. So when they do something which is perhaps a little bit challenging or painful in the sense that it requires mental effort or emotional effort, they grow closer together. The key there is the leader and the leadership, or the person facilitating that activity. But when they get together, that's why team building events are so popular, because you're doing something different. You're doing a game, but through the game, we learn multiple aspects of ourselves. And we behave differently, and our true colors come out, which might be pleasant or unpleasant to other people, but you can exchange feedback in a lighter way. Because sometimes we see that at the place of work, we give feedback in a very structured manner. We are very careful on how to say things and to place the correct words, and sometimes we write it through an email, or the ways of communication sometimes at work become very rigid. But through play, these are more fluid.
Yes. Team building activities and through play, sometimes we remove the boundaries of needing to be politically correct with people, and it's like, dude, you need to do this.
Yeah.
Raw, and I'll say it how I feel, and that might help us during our regular work day, because now we are understanding a bit more our characters, how we gel together, why we fight, and so yes.
And that's how kids play. That's how kids react. But sometimes when we reach the adulthood, or we transition from childhood to adulthood, we tend to forget about this.
And what I whilst listening to you explain this aspect, I was reflecting also to another aspect. So what might happen is this: as we are growing older, we get used to doing things in a certain way. I mean, we are creatures of habit, whether we like it or not, and we like to do things consistently, or we might fall into patterns. And what is interesting about that is we might at some point feel comfortable doing what we are doing, or what we have always been doing. And once we feel comfortable, we might say, okay, you know what, I might not need to learn anymore. The moment we continue doing what we've been doing because it worked, and the moment we stop challenging ourselves, that's the moment when we stop learning.
Yeah.
And you mentioned one word, and you sort of were a bit hesitant to say it because it's pain. Well, pain in itself, we are in a society where we like to avoid pain. And again, pain in itself, just for the purpose of pain, is probably not good. People who just love pain are called masochists.
Yeah.
But then we've got all the other side of the coin, where we say no pain, no gain, pain is glory, etc.
Yeah.
And I, whilst having one deep conversation with one of my colleagues, we were discussing, and we sort of came to an agreement that part of life is pain. Pain is inevitable. Now, we might say, I don't want to have this type of pain, but in the end, we might select which pain we are going to get, but pain is still going to be there. Mm-hmm. Let's take a stupid and simple example. If I say, I don't want to train every day because that's painful. Again, is it fun to sweat? Is it fun to challenge yourself? Well, I find it I'm actually motivated to train because I like the way I feel after a session.
Yeah.
Okay. But in itself, I don't know, lifting weights, doing squats, is that fun? Debatable. Is it pain? Well, it's not pain. It's a type of pain.
Yeah.
But if you choose all your life not to do that, and if you choose all your life not to eat well, and if you choose all your life to get the simplest way out, which is probably stay on the sofa, watch television, and eat bad food, then you're going to have pain in a different form.
Yeah.
You might have pain in your knees, you might have illnesses, you might have diabetes. So, which pain would you rather have?
I think that's the pain of progress, because I think over the years, as technology progressed, and with all the progress that has been over the past 50 years even, the human got comfortable.
Yes.
So you have to actively make the decision and mental effort to put yourself in a sticky situation or in a less uncomfortable situation, and actually to improve yourself. Before, this was in existence because every day was a struggle. There were more illnesses, there the jobs were more difficult because it required more manual labor than was today. So the pain part was a default. Today it's a choice.
Yes. In fact, my grandpa used to walk every day from Slema to the airport and back. Why? Because he didn't have any other means of transportation. So, and again, did he complain? Probably, but he had to do it.
Yeah.
But he's still alive and he's 97 years of age.
Wow.
So the thing is this, okay, we might have created all the tools and all the systems so that we have less painful things.
Mm-hmm.
And again, reflecting on my own process and how I'm trying to raise our very young boy, the thing is this, we might want to remove the pain from younger generations. Why? Because we might say, when I was younger, we used to do this and that, and now you don't need to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, granted. But by removing all those elements, then we are removing an element of growth.
Yeah.
Through growth, through pain, we grow.
That's true.
So, again, when I used to run, and I recall this whilst climbing, running up a very long and dreading part of Bin Gemma Hill, and we used to run next to each other, and then we used to say, okay, the harder the climb, the better the view. So again, from the perspective of personal development and growth, and if you don't want to grow, that's okay. That you don't want pain, that's okay. But I feel the need that I want to continue putting myself in situations where I am a little bit uncomfortable, because if I'm too uncomfortable, I might feel that it's way far out of my comfort zone. But knowing that I need to do it to grow, and knowing that I need to remind myself to be in that position to continue growing, it was quite an interesting lesson even for myself.
Mm-hmm. As we were discussing before, I've been involved in Scouts for quite a while now, and I've seen many kids grow and develop into adults now. And and when it comes to this, I've always go back to this one particular story. So every year we organize this expedition, which is, for those of you who don't know what an expedition is basically we walk for a couple of kilometers, we set up the tent, we sleep, and then in the morning we strike down the tent and continue walking for 2 days. So either we do it for 2 nights or 1 night, it depends on the group that we have. And for most, this will be the first experience such as this one. So we do a session on what equipment, what to buy and what not, and so that we teach the kids that it's important to plan. It's important to plan your route, for example, to avoid high hills so that you can at least keep the ground as level as it can be so you don't exert yourself too much. It will still be painful because to walk 35 kilometers in the day for a 13-year-old kid, it's challenging with 15 kilos on your back, because you have to carry your clothes, you have to carry your food and drink, because we have a challenge not to buy food or drink, so you have to carry all your stuff on your back, which is difficult.
Yes.
And so we make all these preparations. At the moment we're doing these preparations because in April we'll have the expedition, and the most important thing to have is a shoe. It's a boots. It's a hiking boots. But it's not. And I've did this mistake myself when I was at that age. You don't only need to buy the shoes, but you need to break it in. You need to wear the shoes for a couple of times before, so that your feet will get adjusted to the shoes and your shoes get adjusted to your feet. And this kid didn't plan for it, and he came with a new shoes completely. It was brand new. It even had the tag on it. And I advised him, listen, you're going to hurt yourself with it. Are you sure you want to proceed? Yes, I want to proceed. And there was his mother at the time with him, and said, "Okay, but if you're coming, you have to finish it. It's 35 kilometers. It's easier said here since we're at the base camp, but when we're at the 15th kilometer, you start feeling the pain." But I admired his courage. But he spent 3/4 of the expedition crying. His feet were sore, were blistered. He was hurting himself. And obviously, I was very cautious of that, and I was very mindful that he might hurt himself. And he played football at the time, and he had some important games coming up. And listen, you want to go home? I gave him the choice. No, I want to continue because I told that I had to finish it. And secretly, I used to call his mother every now and then to update her on the progress. I wouldn't let her know that I wouldn't let him know that I called her, so that I don't discourage him. But at the end, he finished the expedition. So during the night, we treated the wounds because he had several blisters. Because obviously, I'm not sure whether you experienced it. Personally, I did. I did the same exact mistake when I was younger. So the difference was that nobody told me.
Okay.
So that was the only difference. But ultimately, it was there were two important lessons for this child and for myself as well. The first one was perseverance. Because he persevered through the pain. It was a very uncomfortable situation to be in, even with the first aid that we did during the challenge. So that was the first one, that he learned that listen, I can count on myself to push through. And that's a very important skill to possess. The belief that you can rely on yourself when shit hits the fan.
Yes.
That was the first lesson. The second lesson was the importance of planning. So for sure, this child will remember the pain that he went through because he didn't plan, because he didn't think things through, even though he was giving all the advice that was needed. So I knew that he was going to hurt himself in that sense. But my job as a leader was to give him a safe environment in which he could fall and pick himself up. And I can appreciate that as a leader, it's easier. But as a parent, it's very difficult to let your child fall and support them to getting back up and regaining their senses. It's much more difficult to let people fail in that sense and help them regain their posture.
And adding on that, it's so interesting because when I look at myself from the outside in, I have always been, or I grew up to have enough confidence in myself, knowing that I am going to finish this. Now, I'm saying generally as a person, I like to see things through, for good or bad. So I don't like loose ends. And I can compare myself to other people that I know, and some people are like, yes, but for example, some friends of mine would be like, you know what, no, if it doesn't feel good, I quit. That's okay. So conversely, I had times when I used to go out when I was much younger. I'll go out drinking to Pacheville till 4 a.m. in the morning. Mm-hmm. I'll drink half a bottle of vodka. And then at 7 or 8 in the morning, I used to jog from Birkirkara to St. Julian's, seeing the same guy that sold us the vodka. And he's like, he does a double take. And he's like, didn't I see you like 4 hours ago? And I was like, yeah, I did that even more recently. I had like long nights out, and we used to have like a team long run on Sundays, and I used to be like, yeah, I know that I went out and I drank way too much alcohol, but I gave my word that I'm going to run.
And that's self-discipline.
So it's good because it's self-discipline, yes, it's good because it's self-motivation, and sometimes I used to convince myself, like, I am the worst guy off in this situation, meaning other people had a long night's sleep, they drank a lot of water, they ate rice yesterday evening, I just had a pizza 4 hours ago over a stomach full of gin or what have you. But I'll still run the same distance and I'll actually overtake them if I can. So, in that sense, I used to believe that even though I might be in a worse situation, I'm gonna strive to do what I need to do. A more recent lesson is that, the lesson in that is that, there is mind over matter. Yes, if I am determined to do this, I know that I will do it. Full stop. But, on the other hand, what my injury taught me is listen to your body. In the sense that, whilst running a half marathon and trying to beat your own personal best, do you have to listen to your body? Yes, to a certain extent. Meaning that after the 15th kilometer, your body is going to start hurting you in places that you never thought existed.
Yeah.
And you've got to ask yourself, is it really my body that's hurting me, or is it my mind trying to create an excuse for me to stop?
Yeah.
But in the end, we need to listen to our body, because if we don't, that's how we hurt ourselves, that's how we injure ourselves. So it's that fine line where, yes, listen to your body, but do you always listen to your body or not? And back on the planning aspect, just like anything else, running requires planning. If you're going to race, you need to plan. If I had to come here using my bicycle, I had to plan.
Yeah.
And that also ties to my line of work, which is implementation of standards, which are all based on 4 principles. The 4 aspects: plan, do, check, and act. So for any activity that we do in life and in business, we need to do those 4 steps. Plan, see what you need to do. So if tonight we're going to train, then I need to plan at what time and what body part am I going to do, and what exercises I'm going to do. And I also know that if I tell myself tomorrow I'm going to wake up at 6 in the morning and train, unless I have planned the session, it won't happen.
Yeah.
So the plan needs to be well defined enough for me to be able to execute, which is the second step, doing. So I wake up or I do my session. Then I check. So I check if what I did was effective. It could be also that maybe I noticed that, I need to plan better. Or what I planned wasn't good enough because I still didn't wake up. So I need to change what I need to do. And then acting. So acting would be, what changes do I need to implement so that when I do this cycle again, I improve on it. Again, it can be applied to anything. So if you want to do the expedition, you need to plan. What are you going to require, the resources, the tools, etc. You need to do the expedition. You need to check what we are doing during the expedition, and we need to learn what we did right and what we did wrong, so that next time round we learn even more. So, yeah.
Funnily enough, in Scouts we have this principle which is very similar to that. The plan, do, review approach. So it's 3 steps, so it's not 4, but it's very similar. As you plan, you do, and you review. It's sort of you reevaluate and you start back the cycle. But the most thing that came to mind as you were explaining is that the importance of sometimes we have to think, and we need to be aware that we are thinking, so we're thinking with intent, and sometimes we have to act, so we have to think like a machine. Sometimes you just have to do it. No questions asked. If you have to train, if it's in the calendar, sometimes you have to do it. And it's okay to say, I'm not feeling like it today, but it needs to be disciplined as something that helped me. Yes.
In fact, you mentioned having a coach. Okay,
Yeah.
so I had realized when I started running when I started running more frequently, that I don't like the planning part.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't good at it. So just like anything, if you want to improve, if you want to reduce your half marathon time, you can either try and do it haphazardly,
Yeah.
or else you can gain that competence, you learn, you read a book, you buy a training program or buy an app or whatever you need to do, or else you could get assistant, you could outsource that part. So I got the help of a coach, and I used to tell him, you're the coach, you're the man with the plan, tell me what you need, tell me what you want me to do, and I will do it. And I will train, I will not question, I will follow your plan blindly, in the sense that you tell me what I need to do and I do.
Yeah.
And that's why planning is so important, because if you say I want to train upper body tonight, and you don't write down your workout, and you change in your clothes and you do your warm-up, what are you going to do then?
Yeah.
So that aspect needs to be, okay, now I plan this, now it's time to execute. And time to execute, even though during the execution you might realize that something is off, sometimes it's better just to complete the workout as it is, as it was written, as it was intended, and then change it the day after when you're planning the next session.
Yeah.
So yes, I get that. Sometimes you need to be like, it's go time.
You have to do it.
That's it. I have to do it. And I have to do what's written in there.
Yep.
So when I outsourced this part to my coach, it was simple. Because I was like, you know what? You're the man with the plan. You do the magic. I just need to execute. If I don't execute, you need to hold me accountable.
Yep. And it becomes an issue of accountability. So if you don't plan, you're shooting yourself in the foot, especially in training, because you can't wing it, or you can wing it, but if you wing it, you're not receiving the immediate reward, which is I managed to follow the plan, and you can track your progress. So over time, if you wing it every day, you don't have a target. The target becomes blurry, so you don't have any reward. So at some point, 1 year down the line, 2 years down the line, you will be stumbled with this question: why am I doing this?
Yes.
And you lose motivation. As soon as you lose that thrill of training, as soon as you feel that you've accomplished something big in training, you lose interest. Especially when you're training alone, in the sense, if you're training in the gym, either at home or either in the gym, and you don't have anyone to compare yourself to, it's very easy to be disheartened.
Yes. In fact, that's why getting a coach is, getting a coach or getting a personal trainer, automatically you have increased your accountability, because again, how many times are you going to cancel that session at the 11th hour?
Yep.
You'll do it once, second time round you'll be like, I already did that last week, now I have to go. Get a training group, get people with similar interests, get in a running group, because that way you'll be like, okay, now it doesn't feel that bad if we run 15 kilometers and we're 15 people and I can have a chat with the guy next to me. If I had to do it alone, that's a totally different question. Mm-hmm. And also there's the sense of group now. Okay, I need to go because there's a group and we have to do this together. And thirdly, I had read another quote recently, which was like, you only need motivation for the first session. After that, it's all discipline.
Yeah.
And discipline is just being consistent. And some of my friends that train every day, why is discipline important? Because motivation, it's going to wear out, and it wears out very quickly.
Yeah.
How many times are you going to be like, okay, I'm pumped up, I just downloaded this playlist on whatever platform I use, I got ready, I listened to this song, now we're here at the gym, let's go, okay. That happens maybe once, twice, 3 times. After that, it's discipline. Yes. It's go time.
How would you summarize the word discipline?
Discipline. So, being disciplined in this sense is probably more about being consistent. It's I think I would look for, I would rather have that aspect. Well, disciplined in itself, it's more about consistency.
Okay.
So, through example, recently we were restructuring our own company, and as part of our process, we came up with certain numbers, let's call them measurables.
Okay.
Obviously, we set the vision, we set our mission and our strategy and where we want to go. So what's our purpose?
Yeah.
Where are we heading to?
It's a good starting point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In 10 years' time, in 3 years' time, and this year. What do we need to achieve by the end of the year? Perfect. And now chunking it down to every quarter. Perfect. So once we had that in place, then we said, which numbers are important for us? So in terms of sales, in terms of the operations, in terms of the billing, which numbers are important? So if we are, let's take an example of this podcast, you might say, for this podcast, I want to have it driven to being, I don't know, the number 1 podcast in Malta or internationally. I don't know. And these are my numbers. I'm going to report every week the number of followers on our YouTube channel or the number of likes on our Facebook page. And these become your numbers.
Yeah.
Then, once you've set them, we planned, is the do part. Now we need to be consistent. So every week, I'm going to be measuring these numbers and writing them down in this system, knowingly that at some point I might realize that these are not the right metrics. So this happened to us. We've set our numbers, we started collecting information. After about a month and a half, we were like, okay, but we set these metrics up. But are they the right metrics? And we started questioning them.
Mm-hmm.
And then we took it a step back and we said, okay, these are the numbers that we've set. We now know that they are not correct, but we're going to continue measuring them. We're going to continue following them up because now we need to do it for the sake of being consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Because the easiest thing to say would be, but these are not good. So let's scrap them. So let's not measure anything. No, we know that they're incorrect. We're going to continue measuring them. After these 3 months have passed, we will change the numbers again and we will continue on our practice of being consistent.
Okay.
The reason is this, that consistency is more important than the actual number itself. Because as soon as we lost, or if we lose our consistency, then we start questioning everything, then we start questioning everything in the wrong way, saying, now since we didn't fill in these numbers, then we maybe skip this weekly meeting. And why are we doing this system again? And are we sure of the 10-year target? And so that's why I'm saying sometimes being consistent is better than actually stopping a discipline because you know it's the wrong discipline. So again, in this case, even with our clients, we help them set quality objectives, for example. And it happened once, I recall it was a very interesting exercise. So we told our clients, you need to have quality objectives in place to be in line with the ISO 9001 quality system. And we explained what the standard requires. In simple ways, you need to say what you're going to measure, when you're going to measure it, how frequent, and how will results be evaluated.
Okay.
Paraphrasing the standard. So again, the standard is very loosely defining what you mean by quality objectives. And this client, for example, said we want to measure, as part of our objectives, the number of new clients that we're going to acquire during this year for a new service area. And we said, okay, let's measure that. After a year of measuring that target, during another meeting, they said, well, we've been measuring this, but now we're realizing that we're just counting the number of clients. So if we close, and this was a cleaning company in this case, so they're saying, okay, if we close a deal with ABC Limited and they require 4 hours of cleaning every week, that's one client. But if we close a deal with another client which requires 50 hours of cleaning every week, that's still one client.
Yeah. But the value is...
So it's totally different.
Yeah.
So then they were like, okay, should we measure the number of clients or should we measure the number of hours that we sold? Or should we measure them both? Or should we measure the hours only and not? But again, our experience taught us that when setting the first objectives, we could have had a weak discussion about which are the best objectives to set.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it's much better to set the objectives as best as you think, as best as you can, but within the time constraint that you have. Say, okay, these are the objectives of this year. Then find ways to disprove them after a year or after 6 months. But the most important part of all of this is to get the momentum going.
And to learn.
And to learn. And in this case, I told this particular client, because they were telling me, is this good? Because now we're going to change the objectives. I said, if we need to change them 50 times, that's good, because that means that you've disproved the previous objectives 49 times based on information as to why they're not good for you.
Mm-hmm.
What might be a struggle at times is that you might say, this is not going to work for me before even trying it. In business or in STEP, we call this the traction part, which is like the momentum part.
Okay.
So it's much better to get the momentum going, even though sometimes you might not be taking the most efficient route.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But the fact that you got the momentum going, that's the most important part, because then you will improve along the way.
Yeah. And you'll become efficient by default, because even it's learning how to drive, for example. At first, you're not as efficient, but the most important thing is getting the basics right, the way you position your arms on the steering wheel, the way you position your legs on the gas, the brake, and whatever. In case of automatic, you only have to.
Yes.
But the way you...
Simpler.
Yeah. So it's the way you position yourself, but in a couple of months' time, it becomes automatic. And in a couple of years' time, you would be thinking about your shopping list as you drive. So the brain is designed to be automatic.
Yes.
So efficiency will come by default as a byproduct. So I agree with what you're saying, because it's most important thing is being consistent, doing it a number of times so that it becomes automatic by default.
Back to martial arts.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to have, for example, a kid, and I tell him, okay, today we're going to learn this technique, which is basically a punch and a movement. So we're going to learn how to change from this movement to another movement.
Okay.
And I'll say, okay, go and repeat that. How many times? 100 times. Okay. They do it 100 times, then they'll be like, I'm ready. I know it. I said, okay. Do you know it? Okay. Then I go like this. If I manage to hit him, and he'll be like, okay. Then it means that you don't know it. Repeat. 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 And at one point, again, especially in kids, they might get bored very easily. But I know it now. I did it 100 times. I know. It's obvious that I know it. No. You think you know it, but you don't know it. So just get into the pattern, repeat it until it becomes muscle memory.
Yeah.
Same thing in business.
Yes.
You need to repeat it once, twice, 3 times, 5 times, 100 times, and then it might sink in.
Yes. It's the value and quality over time. And I think that, especially when you're starting up, you're trying to get as many clients on board as possible, you're trying to do as many things as possible so that you can land a client or land a sale.
Yes.
And sometimes sometimes it's very easy to fall into the trap into the quantity over the quality aspect. But I believe that if you provide value and quality consistently enough, clients will come by default. The money will come by default in that sense. So it's a byproduct of your constant effort to put value and quality in the forefront.
Yes. And what's also interesting about that is that it's how processes grow and how processes are shaped. So we get to deal with a number of different companies. Some companies were at startup stage and some companies were literally established in the 1850s. I have a client of mine in Malta established in the 1850s. So they've been doing the same process over and over again. Now, what happens is this: through repetition, processes tend to fall in place. Processes tend to be structured. Processes...
They become fossilized, I would say.
Fossilized. And again, why? Because, the word fossilized in itself might mean that we have done this in this way for so many times.
Becomes resistance at that stage.
It might become even a hindrance, because that's how we always did things, so don't question them.
Yeah.
We've been doing this since the 1850s. Okay, but technology changed since the 1850s. Having said that, in small businesses and in new startups, what we do as a company usually might be a bit harder, because we tend to help write down processes, or we structure processes as part of what we do. And smaller businesses might have not repeated a process a number of times, and so they might have not yet established ways and means for them to say, okay, this is how we want things done. So sometimes in the way that we work, usually the best companies to write down a process or to document a process is not the first time that they're doing it around. We usually would say, okay, I mean, the first time you issued a quotation, did you have a process? The first time you mentioned to close a deal, did you have a process? You had to follow a sequence.
Yeah.
But if you did that successfully 5 times, you might be able to write down a process. But if you did that successfully 10 times or 15 or 100 times, then you might be thinking, okay, I've already tried it enough times to know what's right, what works, what doesn't, what I need to change.
Yeah.
So there's that element of things. Having said that, the element of questioning what we're doing needs to be there again, because we might fall into the trap that, no, this is what we've always done, so don't ask me why and how. Those were lost a long time ago. This is how we do things now.
It's a loss, I would say, because you'd have so much experience in that particular process that you know exactly what works and what doesn't, or what could be improved in that regard. I believe no process is perfect, and there's always room for improvement, especially in the case of technology. So if you've done this process for 100+ years, I'm sure that, as you said, with the introduction of new technologies, you can do it better, for sure.
And in the line of our work, we usually don't go about telling clients they need to improve their processes, meaning that for all intents and purposes, as long as the process is effective, it's good enough. Having in mind the aspect of efficiency as well. So there's a huge difference between effectiveness and efficiency. Yeah. But making sure that the process is both effective and efficient is what then the business needs to make sure that it's in place. I mean, having said that, what might happen, it might happen to everyone, but what might happen is this, that when we are performing the part where we said plan, do, check, act, when we're doing the do part very frequently, and sometimes we are caught up in the do part, so I am doing the quotations. I always do the quotations for 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Then what might happen is that I stop questioning my process itself, because now I'm used to it.
Yeah.
And what was recently a very interesting experience is that I was doing an internal audit with a client of mine, and I asked a question to this individual, which apparently she's well known to be the person that is most resistant to change in their organization. And I asked something along the lines, okay, you have a membership approval process which is currently working in this way. You receive an application, then you compile a list of pending members, then you send it by email to a group of people which then need to review all these members.
Okay.
And then they need to reply by email to give their go-ahead for each and every member. Okay. And you've been doing this for how many years? A long time, okay. And I'm like, okay, but don't you see that you are basically being the bottleneck, and what you're doing is just simply sending an email to people and waiting for feedback, and can't you see that it's not efficient, maybe? Obviously, there was the first element. I mean, what do you mean by this? Okay, this is how we've always done this. This is what our policy states. This is no, but we do this because of this. Okay. After digging deeper and saying, okay, I actually used this example. I told this person, you do realize that now, literally during the audit, it's almost 12. I can use this app right now, order food from anywhere on the island. Yes. What are the approval processes that need to happen? The restaurant needs to receive my order. The bank needs to make sure that I approve the payment. The chef needs to make sure that he receives the order and needs to produce the food. The driver needs to go there, pick up my food, deliver it here. Okay, and this can all be done within 30 minutes. It's like, okay, yes. I thought that, okay. Now let's think outside of the box. I had the advantage of not being pressed on time. So we could actually go into this conversation. So I said, okay, now let's think that the world is a blank canvas. And we have all the tools and all the resources that we can ask for.
Yeah.
Comparing how you are approving members or how you are approving users to how I can order food, two completely different systems. Can you see how you might use technology, how you might simplify your process, Now, throughout this 5-minute conversation with this person, she was like, okay, so, how about, what started happening was this. She got out of the frame of mind of this is the status quo to, now I can question the status quo. Not because we want to question everything.
Yes.
Just because she never thought that she could question the process.
But sometimes it's the taking a step back and looking at the bigger picture as well. And it's a journey. Sometimes you need a helping hand, and you are the helping hand in this situation, that you took the person from a point A to a point B journey. Say, okay, imagine something,
this.
And it became visual. It became clear.
Yes.
So it's very difficult to look at the bigger picture at times.
What was very interesting is that this person told me, but you could do this. And why could I do that? Because I'm not in the process myself. So obviously having a fresh pair of eyes asking certain questions, for me it was apparent that this process is inefficient. It's not ineffective. Members or clients get approved.
Yeah, yeah.
So effective, perfect. For the purpose of ISO 9001 or whichever standard, effective, good. But for the purpose of efficiency, it was apparent almost immediately that we're not being efficient. You are not being efficient, hence why I could see that very clearly immediately. What was also very interesting is that in this case, the CEO empowers all individuals to challenge the status quo. So there is that actual willingness, which sometimes might not be the case.
Yes, that's true.
So again, once I was explaining the situation to the CEO and saying, okay, this is what's happening and this and that, and this individual herself, she understood and was getting out of the frame of this is what we do because that's how we always worked. The CEO was like, oh, okay, that's different because usually he or she is the person that is most resistant to change. And the CEO was telling me, well, isn't this obvious that we should have done this a long time ago? Yes, but what's obvious to you is not obvious to me, and maybe the message wasn't very clear or isn't very clear throughout the organization. So again, in this case, it was a very interesting exercise of us understanding that, and this is how I used this particular example, to then extend it over the whole organization or the whole department in this case, where I said, well, this is just one example of a way of questioning what we are doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I literally told them, listen, if there's something that you are doing, an activity that you're doing 10 times every day, 20 times every day, 50 times every day, you need to be vulnerable, you need to be open to learning better ways of how to do things. Yeah. So if it's simply sending an email, and I know that I'm pressing the send button every time, and I'm sending 250 emails a day, it would benefit me a lot if I learn how to use the send shortcut on my keyboard. If I'm using Excel every day, then it might benefit me a lot to learn how to use it in a more effective way. Again, given that the individual needs to be open to learn and vulnerable.
And sometimes the most effective way to do this is is to have a third party.
Yeah.
And an even greater effectiveness would be to have a person outside the company, a consultant. And because the person can look at the situation with a pair of fresh new eyes. So, for example, and I'm often that person at the place I work, because I am the middleman. Because I am in the HR, I can be the middle person between two people who are having a confrontation. So I can be as unbiased as I can be, obviously as humanly possible, but I can be neutral so that I can sort of devise a compromise in that situation. I'm an insider, but it can very easily be an outsider, a consultant, an external consultant who does that job. And in some sensitive situations and in some important changes, having that person, either insider or either outsider, who is able to turn the tables around, it's important, especially from what you're mentioning as well.
Also, what I get to see almost on a regular basis is this, that I get to audit a number of companies, my team gets to visit a lot of companies, we have a lot of different exposure, and we gain experience by seeing a lot of different work environments. So today I was in a branding company, they specialize in design, tech, etc. Yesterday I was at a a place that rents vehicles. The day before I was at a manufacturing plant, and we're always discussing the same aspects of a standard, which is, again, a standard that can be applied for the benefit of different companies.
Yeah.
But seeing from an outside perspective, and again, during our in-person visits, which is a bit, which was again another part of our learning experience. We did online audits. We had done online audits even before COVID with some of our international clients, but having a physical presence at the client, going there, seeing how things are done, questioning things, the whole purpose of all of that activity, irrespective of a standard or what have you, is to add value. And to add value, we need to find ways in which the company or the organization can implement things for its own benefit. So again, I use this phrase quite often during our meetings. I tell my clients, I'm saying this because if I am running your company, or if your company was mine, or if this, I say that because I feel that I should be the person that's highlighting certain things to management or to employees that I would have wanted them, I would have wanted outsiders to highlight if I was running a company. Again, challenging the client in a diplomatic way, not for the sake of challenging them because we think that we are right all the time, which is not the case. But recently I was discussing with a client of mine and I said, you are the director of a company that works in the language industry. You are doing work that is very technical in itself, I get it, but what's the hardest to find in terms of human resources? Is it a translator or is it a managing director? And he's like, it's very hard to find translators for this language combination. What? I said, I'm sure it is. Just like it's hard to find a good person for our role. It is. But what's the hardest? To recruit a translator or to recruit a managing consultant, to recruit a managing director, because you are a managing director doing the role. So I told him, listen, if you're thinking of scaling your business, you need to get out of this position. Knowing, and this is again how we could then add value, because it's easier said than done. And I know his struggles because I, myself, am going through the same struggles in my business. So it becomes, on some level, yes, I am giving them consultancy on standards. But on another level, it becomes a discussion with management on common problems, and we exchange information of how they dealt with their issues and how I am dealing with my issues, where we both learn.
And that's the relationship part. So I think that's very important.
Literally, my client this morning, I asked them, when did you as a company realize that you needed a physical office? And the guy goes like, what do you mean by that question? I said, did you always have an office? And they started explaining, and again, this is a company that was up to about 40 people. They were like, when we started the business, we were 2 guys working in a room. Then we needed to grow, and then we rented a maisonette that fit 8 people. And then when we started feeling it getting stuffy, we rented a floor, and we were 8 people in a floor. We were literally lost. And then we rented 2 floors. But the answer was, we always had an office. Okay. And then the guy goes like, but why are you asking me? I said, well, we are in a stage where I'm questioning ourselves. Do we need an office? Why would it be good?
If it's feasible or not.
It's feasible, how much is going to be used? Again, today, if we had an office, no one would have been in the office. because both of my colleagues are consulting a client in Holland and I'm here. So the office
Okay.
would have been there for nothing.
Yeah.
So, but do we need it? Do we not need it? Is it good for the culture? Is it?
Mm-hmm.
So again, I asked this question, they gave me an answer. And then we were discussing about recruitment and we discussed how having a very structured onboarding plan for an individual that would last 12 months helps both the company and the recruitee, even at selection stage, because it shows that if someone's interested in joining the company, there is an actual plan
Yeah.
for 1 year.
And that's different from induction, because induction and onboarding are two different things.
So yeah, and again, this, is it part of the standard? Yes,
Yeah.
it is. It's loosely, it can be fitted in the standard, because the standard in this case speaks about competence of people. If I see an onboarding checklist, I might be like, okay, yes, there's the onboarding checklist, the requirement has been met, okay. But it's not just about meeting the requirement. Just like, again, it's not about in martial arts knowing the theory. You might know all the theory, but then cannot apply anything. So the same case in the case of a standard, it's there, it's a guideline. If you use it only to get the certificate, then the benefit that you're going to get from it is going to be very little.
Yes.
If you use it to your own advantage, questioning all the aspects that you're implementing and making sure that it really helps you, then you'll get much better benefits.
What I took out of this is that the importance of backtracing your progress. Sometimes you're too busy focusing on the next step that you forget what steps you took in the first place to be here today.
Yes.
So I think that sometimes we have to spend some time in reflecting on how we got here today. And most often than not, I think that's underestimated at times, because we ripe value out of it. Because what decisions did we take in order for you to become here? I mean, for example, let me pose the question to you. Why did you accept to join this podcast today?
Okay. That's interesting.
Why are you here today?
Why am I here? Because I went on LinkedIn, I think it was on Monday.
Yep, I think so.
I went on LinkedIn on Monday. I hadn't opened LinkedIn for a couple of days. And I saw that probably I had congratulated you either on your birthday or on a job anniversary, the auto notifications.
Yes.
And I had seen that you had invited me for a podcast. And yes, I had seen another podcast that you did with David.
Okay.
And I was like, okay. And I said, you had asked me to set a short meeting. I was like, yeah, let's set a short meeting. I sent you the link to Calendly. We found that, and it really happened because you set the meeting. We discussed for 15 minutes. You told me that recordings are done every so often.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I can make it on Friday. But it's either this Friday or else it's going to be like 2 months from now. And here I am. What's interesting is that we can only connect the dots backwards.
Yes. And that's the process. But what were your intentions of getting out of it?
And in fact, I thought about this. I thought about it quite deeply yesterday. I was like, okay, so why am I here? I am in a personal journey of growth. And it's actively trying to get myself out of my comfort zone. I am quite confident behind the camera, although until I do get behind the camera, I'm not looking forward to it.
Okay, yeah.
And you told me, okay, this is going to be a podcast. I will ask you 4 questions that you will never get to answer because we'll discuss about everything except for these questions. So I was like, okay, this is a good opportunity for me. I'm going to go there. I'll see what we can get out of it. If anything, it's going to be a learning experience. I don't expect to go there discussing about what I do for a living and what we do as a company. I don't expect to get clients directly from this. It's nothing that I'm looking for, not using this channel.
Yeah.
But in any case, it's a good experience. So, yeah, why not? So that was my approach. It's good to try new things.
Okay.
It's good, and it's good to learn. Again, it's my first experience. So what's gonna work? Is
Yeah.
it good? Is it not good? We'll see.
And as a concluding remark, I mean, we've set a new record for podcasts. I think this is the longest podcast I've had. So yet. So
Okay.
I think we had a very good conversation, but I'm very curious on what you're taking out of this conversation today.
So what I'm taking out of this is that it's interesting to link what we've discussed about training and physical fitness and the journey itself, and looking back now, it's easy to connect the dots. So again, when I had started cycling to Rabat after secondary school in Form 3, that was a decision that I took back then, which then led to another decision, and there were incremental decisions which led to a point, which is today. Same thing I can say about my work and about my job. I never dreamed to have my own company. I never dreamed of having a consultancy business. It happened. I did catering, which led me to other things. But the most interesting aspect was this, that throughout both training, work, etc., I was open to new possibilities. So without being open to the new possibility, then surely nothing is going to happen. So just being open means that if I leave that door open, then one thing might lead to another. So yeah, it's about that. Trying new things is good, and being open is important.
Okay. Stefan, it was a pleasure having you here. I think we had a great conversation. Personally, I had a vision about this as I do with every episode. But I have to say that this was the most unexpected turn of events. So the way I visualized it was completely different, and I was so pleasantly surprised, if I must say. And I think we had a great chat today. So Stefan, thank you for accepting and for being courageous enough to try new things and for being here today.
Thank you for the invite. And so far, this is the longest podcast you've had. Maybe when we do another revisit, we will have an even longer one.
Well, if we adopt the running mindset, we have to improve our time. In this case, increasing the time.
Increasing the time. Well, maybe next time we'll reduce the time and we are more effective and efficient in what we discuss.
And that's a nice way of putting it.
Thanks a lot. And again, thank you for the invitation. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Stefan. Likewise, same here.
Thank you.